you don't do the Tuesday night.
No.
The discussion last night I found frustrating,
I don't like that.
because there's no answer to
Oh.
our questions.
All right.
There never is. When will you ever learn?
I mean, there's no,
We try to
there's
make it
absolute-
so.
yeah, we want it to be simple, but it's not, and that was
Right.
part of what our conversation was about, but it was,
Right.
but as you're actually, you're saying those words, but then you're actually realizing that that's true.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers.
Yeah. I want to sign up for the Easy Answer program.
Yeah,
I want to sign up for the right answer program.
well, there you go.
Well, you're the problem.
Because I did have a
There's a right answer, but the answer isn't it's
No,
not
not
easy
easy.
to do.
sometimes not what we want to hear either, right, Barbara?
Right. Well, love God, love your neighbor,
you
but
go.
hey, how can you do that? And it's not so easy.
And everybody knows that they're right, so.
Of course. Well,
It's harder.
Right.
So, what do you think?
Good morning to our live stream audience. We have our Zoom audience is here, and the program is underway, and we have our in-person audience here. So I think that each member of the team is present. We are on our Wednesday morning tour. We are doing Isaiah, and I don't remember which was the last chapter we read. Does anybody
we read
remember?
11.
I got 11.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I have marked,
Yeah, I thought,
11.
Well, we did 11 because it's
we're
the
done.
Yes.
That's what
right.
we
Okay,
need.
that was
Yeah,
the
we
last
did
one.
11.
Right.
Yeah,
All right.
So
So
we're
we're
up to
ready to
12.
move on to chapter 12.
sure.
I'm just going to repeat again. This part of Isaiah comes from what's called First Isaiah, and unless you're really, hate the idea that the Bible, in its present form, is not its history. Like they're not chronological, and there are actually three authors writing in very different times. So in order to deal with that, the textual critics have named Isaiah 1, Isaiah 2, and Isaiah 3. And they are, by their style and by the language that is used, they are from different times. Okay? And we'll try to pick up on why that matters as we read through it. All right. So we were talking about the Tuesday night Bible study. We came to a point of really kind of a frustration in that there are no easy answers. And I think making it worse, sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes our need for an answer is in and of itself a misunderstanding of how the universe is set up. It does not respond to our demand for rational behavior. Things happen, and that's why I keep going back to the fact that there's chaos. There is chaos. There is unstructured chaos, which is still a part, maybe a better word is randomness. There is a randomness to life. Now, I love the idea that, we sang in that song, he's got the whole world in his hands, he meaning God, and that we could rest in that idea that God has everything in God's hands. And I think that is biblical, but that doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen, that you're going to wonder if God does even exist. In the end, always in the end. In the end, only kindness matters. Isn't that how the song goes? It's in the end that love triumphs. It's in the end that God's will be done. But I do not subscribe to the view, the theology that says everything that happens is happening according to God's will. I just don't believe that's true. I think if you believe that that's true, you're going to end up with a very strange picture of God, because there are things that happen that should not happen. And God agrees with that. That should not have happened. Now, in the Bible, there is a rehearsal of the deeper idea that the world still responds to God's command, right? There's a sense in which God's not off in the distance, smoking a cigar. God is involved, God is engaged, but that does not mean that things are going to happen that are going to cause us all to wonder what in the world is going on. I believe that in my own theology, when I look at the Christian view of how Jesus died on the cross and the catastrophic disaster of that crucifixion, that the promise of faith and the promise of God in the world is not that horrible, horrible things won't happen. But the promise of God is that out of the disaster, out of the pain, out of the awful thing that happens, God will use God's power to bring something good out of it. That something good will result as the evil unfolds. It's that phrase from Joseph to his brothers, what you intended for evil. He does not say, God intended you to do it so it would turn out well. That's not what Joseph says. What you intended for evil, God has used, God has transformed into something that is wonderful and is beautiful and is great. Now, maybe that doesn't make a difference to you. It makes all the difference in the world to me. I'm pastor in a church, and a child in the congregation is hit by a drunk driver. In no universe will I sit with that family and say, everything happens according to God's plan.
All things work together for
I will not say it. I will not. Now, inside the statement, all things work together for good, is my own understanding, which means no matter how bad, no matter how chaotic, no matter how awful it is, the thing that happens, God has the power and exercises the power to bring something good out of what is awful. It doesn't make it okay. I can't take that call. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't fix it. What it does is, to me, is it positions your eyes toward hope, that it's not hopeless. It can be awful, it can be terrible, but it's not hopeless. So it always seems to me that it's important through this period of time to try to dust off that understanding, because you've got theologians here who are saying Israel was destroyed, annihilated, and the people were murdered and killed according to God's plan, because God wanted to punish the people.
That's a temptation. It's a more simple, it's an answer.
Yeah.
It's not a satisfying one.
No.
But it's an answer.
Right, it is. It's an answer, not one that I'm
An
going to
answer
subscribe
for
to.
people who want to control. That if that's the answer, and then whoever the hierarchy is, can control people by telling them that, I know what God wants, and you need to do this.
Yeah, or threatening the people to say, if you don't do it, look what happens.
Right.
You obey me, or you see what kind of God is. God will bring terror and destruction into your life if you don't do what I want you to do, because I'm God's appointed leader. I don't subscribe to any of that. And none of it. I have to grab another microphone. I have to. I realize I didn't do what I needed to do.
Stand by, technical difficulties.
That is, but I agree with what Barbara said. That's really controlling.
Yeah, well, people will take control and
Yeah.
take advantage of whatever situation comes up.
I put this microphone here pick up
Oh, okay.
your comments, because when I talk, and I've got this mic, my voice is very strong. Anybody that talks on that, you can hear really strong. And then when you guys talk, I see Colette leaning in.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to make sure you can hear, Colette.
Okay, you better.
Hey, you're threatening me?
That's great.
I'll come down there myself.
There's the control freak for you.
That's great.
Well, if that's the case, then we're not,
It would-
listen, we're
It'll
not gonna
probably be
fix.
next year, though.
Okay,
All right.
you got me.
Good.
Because if that's the case, then we just won't let you hear, so you come down here. All right, let's see where the writing and the reading takes us, okay?
Sure.
Chapter 12.
Who's reading?
Who's reading?
I'll read.
All right, go for it.
At that time you will say, I praise you, Lord. You were angry with me, but you are not angry with me now. You have comforted me. God is the one who saves me. I trust him. I am not afraid. The Lord gives me strength and makes me sing. He has saved me. You will receive your salvation with joy. You will take it as you would draw water from a well. At that time you will say, praise the Lord and worship him. Tell everyone what he has done. Tell them how great he is. Sing praise to the Lord because he has done great things. Let all the world know what he has done. Shout and sing for joy, you people of Jerusalem. The Holy One of Israel does great things before your eyes.
Okay. It's like a reverie to God.
Yeah, praising God.
The one thing that I want to say, because I always feel the need to say this, is if you look at verse 2, there's a buzzword in there. Surely God is my salvation.
Surely.
And I'm not going to take anything away, I think, from a certain understanding of that word, but I want you to understand what Isaiah means is salvation is not a spiritual thing here. Thanking God for my salvation is, it's very concrete. What's going on? The cities have been destroyed, the enemies have come, and when the enemy is bearing down and is destroying you, that if something happens, that saves you. This is a saving, which is real.
Like a physical
It's
save.
a physical saving. I thank God for my salvation. In the chapter before, it's talking about how God will, what the extent that God will go to save the remnant. The Lord will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt and will wave his hand over the river with a scorching wind and will split it into 7 channels and make a way to cross on foot. So there will be a highway from Assyria for the remnant that is left of his people, as there was for Israel when they came from the land of Egypt. Salvation in Israel's history is, what did you say? Concrete. It's this world.
Yeah, physical
It's
like.
physical.
Like, yeah,
It's
it's like
physical.
yeah, here.
People were in slavery, they were led out of slavery, and they were saved.
It's not a Christian idea
Yeah.
of salvation through Jesus Christ
That's
or
right.
another intercessor.
Right. And I would even argue that if you take the Christian church, especially in the year that we live in, a lot of the Christian church has, I'm going to say this, spiritualized entirely the idea of God is a savior. The Lord is my savior. I still think even in Christian, good Christian theology, you have still a sense of keeping this saving God rooted in physical experiences. It does not serve well the Christian theology to move it all to, well, what that means is that when I die, God is going to somehow make sure that I'm okay, that I'm saved from hell, saved from torment for the rest of my life. I'm saved from the consequences of my bad behavior in this world. What that has led to is, it has led to congregations and communities of faith who come inside the doors of the church and do not pay attention to what's happening in the world around them. They do not, because salvation is a spiritual thing. Now, I think it's perfectly fine to use salvation as a metaphor in a way, but it always still has to come back to some grounding. And this, Isaiah is talking about, they were surely going to die. They were going to die. They were going to be crushed by the Assyrians. And God, through the events of history, saw to it that they weren't. And so they could say, as the evangelizing teenagers on the beach will walk up to you and go, "Are you saved?" Mm-hmm. they can say, "Damn right, I'm saved. The Assyrians were bearing down on my family, and
We're saved.
God caused the events of history to change, and we're alive." I think some of this concrete kind of salvation is going on in the midst of a lot of not salvation, even in Crimea or in
Ukraine.
Ukraine. There's a lot of people are being saved. When the bomb hit the apartment building and the rescue workers went in, there was a woman who was saved from under the rubble. She was deaf and couldn't hear them, so didn't know when to cry out, but she was saved. It's very concrete. And I'm not dismissing the questions of what happens when we die, and what does it mean that God saves us in this life and in the next. But I'm always interested in seeing to it that, especially Christians, because I'm Christian, keep the meaning of salvation grounded in something concrete. So that when the church goes into Church World Service, I didn't get the word out in time, but Church World Service has a shelter for relocating people, and they're working, especially they have some people from Ukraine, and then they have some people from this deportation that's happening in Florida. And they have a house, they have a building, which is a temporary place for people to come. And they put out the word over the weekend that for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, there was an opportunity for anybody that wanted to come. They were going to clean the house up. It's been used now for several weeks, and it needs cleaning, it needs dejunking, and they put out an appeal for people to come and to help and to get that work done so they can move on to the next group. That is a work of salvation. That is a work of salvation. It's a work of saving the lives of people who are homeless, who are without nations, who are fleeing from persecution. That is, I know, I've said it already, right?
That's good.
But to me, salvation also, it's not only what you do physically, but what mentally and spiritually it does for you.
Yes. Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think what the question then is, what do we need to be saved from?
Well, most of the time ourselves.
Right.
If you continue to pretend that your soul, what we call our soul, our mind, our soul, is separate from our physical being, then, it's easier to say, oh, salvation only means
Right, for the spiritual.
what happens when we don't know.
Oh, I'll give you the card, sorry. Excuse us for a minute, we got to do a little church business here. There you go.
This looks beautiful
Thanks.
today.
Thank you.
All right.
So then it's easier to say, well, there are two different ways of salvation.
Yes.
But to me, you can't separate it.
No.
Yeah, and you shouldn't, because there is a whole bunch of salvation that goes on right here, right now, in the real physical world that, like you said, we're tempted then to ignore. It's not our responsibility.
Too
It's
far
just
away.
absorb it, ignore that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so that puts me on a soapbox that nobody wants to listen to from me. And that is that because I try to be a person of the Bible and the biblical worldview, but it doesn't fit into our worldview. Our worldview is very Greek, and it is really, really affected by the Roman and the Greek view of the person. What is our view of the person? If you went out on the street and you asked people on the street, so what are the different parts of a person? And they would say, well, there's the spiritual part of the person, and then there's the physical part of the person. They may distinguish the spiritual from the emotional, but mostly not. So the point is, we see a human being as made up of our bodies and our soul. Some people say our soul. And then if you ask, if you think about how most people think about dying, they think about the fact that the body dies. But the soul, the stories, the soul rises up out of the body. There's even people that have said that when a body is laying on a gurney and then they die, that if it's a scale, you see that the body gets lighter. Like it actually reduces in weight because the soul has left. I don't have a dog in this fight about how to understand that, because that's not how I understand people. It's not. And why do I say that? Because that's not the view, it's not part of the biblical worldview. The biblical worldview was that God created the human beings out of dust. They're dirt. We are dirt. But then put into the human being the animation of life. So that life itself is the combination of the body and the breath. Not spirit, but breath, breathing. Which is why forever and ever, the idea that a person was dead was when they were no longer breathing. Now we know then it was the heart, and then it went to the brain. But my point is...
But you can't separate.
No, you can't. You can't separate the life of a person from their body. And then this is the soapbox I get on, because the world we live in today has so blended a variety of views, and we are all the result of many, many different ways of seeing life and understanding ourselves. There's no pure track anymore. But the point is, for Christians, the death of Jesus showed that the answer for the solution of the future after death is not about the spirit continuing. It's not about the spirit continuing. When Jesus appeared to his disciples, he was not a spirit. Remember, it says that. He ate. He was in a body.
Yep.
Now, I get it. It's like, I go, okay, I don't really understand how I understand this. But the point is that when you die, in the Hebrew experience, you die. And all of you goes to sleep. You go to the place of rest. You go to Sheol, which a lot of people think is the Hebrew version of hell. It's not. It's in the ground. You go in the ground. And there, according to the interpreters of the New Testament, you wait. You wait. You wait. You're not a spirit in heaven somewhere. You wait. You are waiting, and you are sleeping, which is why a lot of the older gravestones say, rest in peace. You go to the place of sleep until, this is very New Testament theology, until the day of resurrection. Now, resurrection is not, what am I trying to say? It's not the it's not the life of the spirit. Resurrection is literally when the person, body, soul, spirit, however you want to see it, is recreated. It's recreated. And you say, well, where have they been in the meantime? They've been resting in The place throughout all the Old Testament, they talk about the rest of the ancestors, the resting of the ancestor, waiting, the New Testament, waiting for the day of resurrection.
Exactly the Islamic view.
Is that right?
It is. You're in your grave and you're waiting for judgment.
Right.
That's the resurrection day. Yom Kiyama. You'll be raised up again, and then you'll stand before God, and God will say, you know, you did a good job while you were, you know, separated temporarily from me, while you were facing trials and tribulations on this earth, and so you get a reward. And if you didn't do such a great job, then God will tell you what's going to happen to you then. I don't know.
Well, and
That's kind of, but you're resting there till everyone gets up on the same day.
and that is, I'm thrilled to learn that that's at the heart of the Muslim way of understanding life. It's also Hebrew. It is Hebrew through and through and through and through. In fact, my Old Testament professor said that our idea that heaven's up and hell is down does not exist in Hebrew theology.
The world goes around, so
Right, I know. So, that's right.
which way?
That was born on the Flat Earth Society.
Okay.
But in Hebrew theology, heaven has levels. The place of paradise has levels. And I don't know, I can't explain why he said this, but he said, you know, if you got issues unresolved that you should have sought forgiveness for, or you should have done some repair work on in how you lived your life, then you're going to go up to heaven, to the second level of heaven, and turn right. Because on the second level of heaven, to the right, there's a place of reparations. There's a place for you to do business with the bad things that you left unfinished, or that you did not get forgiveness for. There's a place for you to finish the work of your life. That's what, that's what there. But that comes in the day of resurrection.
Not, yeah.
Okay.
It's
You're
when,
not up there with
no, it's not happening like that.
These
No
are lots of
angel
things
wings
that
yet.
we're not privy to completely understand, but in Islamic thinking, it's very much the same. You've got the recording angels, one on the right hand, one on the left hand. They're writing down all the stuff that you did, you thought, and then when you get up there and it's your turn to stand, there's a book for you.
Right.
Oh, well, this angel wrote the good stuff, and this one, you know, how do we balance that? How does your life balance out? And, but we're all doing this at the same time.
Right.
We're all going together. And there are levels of heaven in Islamic thinking too. Al-Firdaus is the highest level. Everybody prays, send me please and my family to Al-Firdaus, because, you know, I want to be way
Yeah.
on the top.
And
But-
even Jesus talked about greater rewards in heaven. Great will be your reward in heaven. Great, he used that language because it was Hebrew. It's Hebrew. Jesus was a Hebrew. He shared the view of all of that. And what I try to fight back for is to say he was a Hebrew teacher, a Jewish teacher in what was becoming fast, a Greek world. The Greeks, the Romans and the Greeks monopolized the thoughts and the worldview of people in his time. So there, you'll see times where Jesus will reach into the Greek view. He tells some stories that seem to accept the dualistic view of life. But Jesus himself, he did not believe in reincarnation. When I say that, if Bonnie was here, she'd be like,
I know.
oh, she'd be like really upset right now. But he did not. Resurrection is not reincarnation. It's not. And I'm not trying to criticize reincarnation. It's an idea. It's a thought. And there are people who subscribe to it. I do not. Because I want to say, I'm a Christian. And Christians see, in the story that you were telling about the end, where we would stand before God, and then the stories of the angels of our children, that's the place where the New Testament writers say, Jesus is good news. Because when you are resurrected, and when you have to stand before your Creator, standing right next to you will be Jesus, who loves you and who is going to plead your
Your
case
case.
before God.
We have the same thing, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad will be there to say, these are my people, and I vouch for them. Let's treat them with a bit more, sympathy in this process, because we're gonna be standing there on, hot sun, and we can't hide anything. All our things that we are gonna be ashamed of will be visible for everyone, but also all the good things, and he's gonna say, I will plead for you, I will intercede for you on that day if I can.
Right.
You are my people. And it's also known that all the other prophets who came before will have the same license to do that. All of Jesus's people will be ushered into a better place by Jesus, and all this. But you'll still have to stand there and answer for what you did,
Right.
no matter whose
Judgment Day.
whose religion you followed, and that means that God recognizes that there are different religions, but the basic truths should be there, and you should be answerable for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful way of telling what I think we as teachers about God's love and grace must be careful to include, because God's grace does not exempt us from consequences for our behavior, either in this life or in the future. But what we should not tolerate is the idea that there's a razor that then cuts us into one group or the other. The whole purpose of Jesus' salvation. What is Jesus' salvation? Jesus' salvation is effective in our lives, saving us today too. In the way we navigate through this life, Jesus saves us from the perils of money and the lust for power, and Jesus saves us in this life if we follow Jesus.
We're following what the prophets say.
Right.
We should be able to be just to others, and we should be able to live a pretty good life if we're allowed to. I mean, and then it goes back to, well, what happens when there are hurricanes and floods and all this jazz? I kind of like the idea, I don't know how Islamic this is, probably not completely, but the idea of fitna, that's chaos in the world.
Yes.
And no matter what we do, there is going to be that. And we were in paradise at one time, but we wanted some self-determination. We wanted to know more than we probably should have. So God said, go ahead, go down, and I've made this place for you as a place to, let's see what you can do.
Yes, see how you work it out.
Yeah, work it out amongst yourselves. Like when you tell your kids, you've got something going on here, I'm not gonna, come between you. Go and work it out, and I'll check back with you later. And I kind of think that's what it is. And the physical universe doesn't change just because God sent us here.
Right.
He already set that up. So we're operating in, a world of physics. This is how the world operates, and things do happen that are not so good. But that has got nothing to do with, we think it's horrible. We're living in this life. But we will go back. It's my hope and belief, and as a Muslim, that is my belief, that we will go back to God. And then we'll say, how'd you do down there? Well, let's see how you did. And then, I don't know what's going to happen from there. I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for Firdaus. But if I get even, like some of the people used to write, just please, let me get my body just over the line into paradise. Take me out of the blazing sun and into the shade of paradise, because that's where I went. And that's a very...
Sounds like a psalm.
I mean, if you come from a desert people, which
Yeah, you can see
You
the
could
shades.
relate.
What do you long for
please
most?
let me in there. So I'm hoping for Firdaus, but even if I just get in there, let me just see.
So I love that way of telling the story. I love the idea that God as a, as an agreement, with human beings. It says, okay, I'm going to give you this space to go and live. Now, the one thing I would say is, to me, the promise of God is not to send us here, in the sense like the Amish send their teenagers out on Rumspringa.
You go have fun,
You
kids.
go and you do what you're going to do, and the consequences of that will be up to you. Instead, if in that Rumspringen, you imagine the parent getting in the buggy with the child and saying, we will do this together. I will be with you.
Well, that's why he sends messengers.
Right. Right. So
We have some,
right. So there's
guidance.
this sense, and I've said this before. When I read Genesis, I meet a God who loves adventure, who isn't standing back, arms crossed like a parent, saying, "Oh, you think you know so much? Well, you go ahead and try it on your own.
Let's see how you do.
See how you make out without me." I think the God of the Bible, with Eve and Adam, the primal story of human beings, is let's walk this walk together. Let's see what happens. Because God, beyond the idea of God of creation, God never imagined this. God never imagined. God put Adam and Eve and Adam in the garden and said, this is perfection.
Right.
And the human beings said, no, it's not. It's not. You don't know us. You're not human. You don't know what we need. Yeah, we love the fruit and the scenery is beautiful, but you do not understand. The one thing you have not given us is control. You haven't given us control. And what kind of control? The control that comes with knowledge of what's going to happen next. It's that we cannot see the future. When I was a child, I was fascinated. In the Sears catalog, you used to be able to flip through and see what new toys were available.
Oh.
I loved the thing that was a scope, where you could look into the scope, and it went up, and then with mirrors.
Oh, yeah,
and you
sort of
could
like a
take it-
periscope.
You could see
Yeah,
around corners.
that was so cool.
I was so fascinated. I could see around corners. I could, I could look in here. No one would know.
Was that part of the spy kit or what?
Yes. And I wanted that thing so badly, but the good ones were really expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Because, what I wanted, I can feel it, was to see what's coming next.
There you
I
go.
wanted to see what's around the corner. And so what God says is, okay, look, now, you won't, but some will, crucify me for this. I don't think God knows.
I disagree with that.
I
I
know.
think God does know, but God doesn't let us know because that's part of the process.
Well, see, what I say to that is, then God's not really in the adventure with us. I think unless God is walking with us, and look at the conversations that go on with God, with arguments with Moses and Abraham. You get the sense that when God it's like, okay, I'll give you the water in the desert. Okay, I'll give you the water. So God gives them the water. And then when they come back and they're complaining, I think God is blown away. I think God is like, what? Because remember,
They're never happy.
I know. And God seems surprised by that. I mean, literally surprised. What is wrong with you people? And if God is asking, what is wrong with you? I want to go, really? You don't know? Like,
I think we think God doesn't know, but I think God knows.
I
And
understand
that's just
that.
the way
I get that. And certainly that's why I
it
said,
blow your mind.
I know people would be really upset with me with saying that.
I'm
But
not upset.
I didn't say you would be, but other people.
I imagine a lot of people would, yeah.
Yeah, and so,
It's not a personal God like that knows everything you're going to do before you do it.
right. But and so I like the fact that you use the personal God. See, to me, that makes God personal. The thing that God is walking with us in this life. That God is with us, beside us. But you don't get to cheat and go, oh yeah, I'm here with you, but I know what's going to happen next. I think that the promise of God, even look at the life of Jesus, the witness of Jesus. A couple of the gospel writers seem to have this sort of like Jesus knows what's going to happen. But if you look at the witness, Jesus seems to also be experiencing life as it
Happening.
comes.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
He experiences, and then he goes to prayer. I think in prayer, he's describing to God, you have any idea what's happening down here? Do you know what's going on? And then he even in the garden says, if it's possible for this not to happen,
That's right.
then let this not happen.
And we do that every day.
Yes.
Please
Oh.
let this happen because I don't want that to happen. But that's as close as we can get to completely controlling what's happening around us.
Right, and I think
But
that
Jesus also knew that what he was deliberately going into was going to put him in a bad spot. So in that respect, he could tell what was pretty likely to happen. But he's still asking
Yeah.
God if you can take this away. Because I'm still going in there, and I'm still going to stand up before the authorities and give them what for. But if you can prevent it, please do. But
yeah, and I think
Meant to be.
again, sometimes I don't think it means a lot to other people. It does to me. I often will on Palm Sunday say Jesus did not go into Jerusalem to die.
no,
He did not.
But
He
he-
went in to make the appeal for life. He
Right.
made the appeal for love to the powers to be.
he knew it was dangerous.
He did, well, yeah, he knew it was dangerous, but he did not,
Did not shy away.
no, he didn't shy away, and I don't think, again, books of theology in my office are written. I don't think Jesus believed his death was inevitable. I don't. I think he went in believing that love was the important rule of the day. The writers of the gospel talk about the fact that he didn't say anything in his own defense. Like he didn't, he was arrested. He said curious things.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the scribes and the Pharisees. Like, really, you wanted to arrest me? You had to come here in the middle of the night? Like, I'm available all day long, every day. So you see Jesus sort of wondering and experiencing.
Very passive, right?
And then, again, to me, my theology finds touch points. And my theology is reinforced in the final words of Jesus from the cross, uttered to God, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. And I think that's a piece of information to God. I think Jesus, from his point of view, is actually communicating and talking about a discovery that he has made about human life and about what causes people to do such horrible things. And that's all why I come back to saying, the God of the Bible is a God of adventure. Adventure. And real adventure.
Well, why would God make us in the first place?
Right. God made us for an adventure. Let's do this.
He could have done
Let's-
perfect things instead of imperfect things, right? So,
And then I go back to that catechism, North African catechism, which asks the first question of the catechism, why did God make you?
That's right.
Why did God make you? And the
Who is
answer
God?
is,
Why did he make you?
So we can
God thought you might enjoy it.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
God, like what? Enjoy is a God word? Enjoy is a God concern? Yes. And so here we are. How did we get there?
God did make perfect beings.
Right.
They're called angels.
Right.
They do exactly what God wants them to do at all times. That's why the angel said to God when he presented his new creation, you have created something that's going to be a real pain in your
Right.
behind.
Yep.
And God said, yes, I have. And
Yes.
That's it.
And let's see what happens.
Exactly.
Let's see what happens. Let's do this and see what happens.
You know, Pastor, I was thinking that, for me, like, I'm thinking about, like, you know, Christ's death on the cross. I think that also his words spoken show his humanity.
Yes?
I mean, over and over again, he revealed that, but, I mean, even at his death, that was there.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
and
he
also
was-
his love for other humans, his forgiveness for the, you know, the thief on the cross and things, like there was so much, you know, even how he spoke with John about, you know, his mother, you know, Mary, and like, oh, see, I think that reveals Christ as a human,
Yes, I don't think Jesus was insulated
not at
from
all.
any, He was tempted in every way as we are
Yes.
tempted, and he suffered as we suffer. He was acquainted with grief. Like,
Yeah.
acquainted with grief. Not insulated. No, the makers of these movies with Jesus. It's like, what Jesus were you modeling this after? Because they have sort of Martian glazed eyes and expressionless faces. They sit like, yes, my child, yes. I don't picture Jesus like that. I'm sorry. I don't think we would recognize Jesus in the Jesus we talk about. The light-skinned Jesus.
I think they're
Oh, with
coming
the
from a
blue
Christian
eyes.
background, and they're trying to
Right.
incorporate the divine
Right.
Jesus with the human Jesus, and not doing a real good job.
Not,
of-
No.
not doing it.
Because how do you express
Right,
that?
the human suffers tremendously. And so I like the doctrine of the church is that Jesus was fully human. People really downplay that when they think about Jesus. But also the gospel writers don't help a lot with that. There's times where it seems that Jesus has an omniscient knowing that, he knew what was going to happen. It sneaks into the gospel, some of them.
Well,
Well,
also,
that's-
if he did, why would he be praying at the last
Yes.
minute?
Right.
I mean, it comes with, I think, our awe of Christ.
So we try to keep both in balance.
Right.
We try to say this wasn't just a man.
Right.
It wasn't just a man who seemed to have a good way of going through life. But we also want the full sense that he lived life the way we do, really the way we do, and needed to trust with the same amount of trust without knowing as we do. And that way he becomes, in some ways, the New Testament presents several models of how we can think about Jesus. And one of the models is we can think of him as our example. He is our example. So if you need a model for how to live your life, he is our example.
I agree.
And,
God sent him as an example.
As
This is
example.
an example. Yeah.
and so that there are some communities where that's the whole deal.
Islamically, that's the whole deal.
Right. And there are Christian communities for whom that's the whole deal. Preachers for whom, when they talk about Jesus, they talk about his humanness and the example of his profound godlike humanness, but it's not otherworldly. It's
It's rooted
this world.
in the
He was
reality
fully
of this
human.
place.
Yeah, like the wisest rabbi you could ever meet,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's how I,
yeah.
because the wonderful things he said,
And all the talk that filters into the New Testament about Jesus, the Son of God, the only way you can make a whole lot about that is if you don't read all the other places and all the people that were called Son of God.
He called himself Son of Man.
Right.
Son of Man,
Right.
right?
That meant he
Who
was-
do you say I am? Right,
Right.
yeah, right. When you were talking about like heaven and all, it went through my mind that someone had said to me a very simple key to heaven, and this is from a fundamental Bible study I was in. They had said, "Nothing in my hands I bring, simply to your cross I'll cling." Bingo. There's nothing you could have done in your life to make you worthy of that salvation and/or your rewards in heaven, except for the fact that Christ went before you.
Right.
And that's how they explained it to me. They said that truly is the key to the kingdom.
But see, they wouldn't like what I said.
Who are you, James? Show me your works.
You wouldn't
No.
hate the idea that you
No.
got a book, you gotta have a
Uh-huh.
balance. Okay,
Yep.
let's balance your good deeds with your bad
No.
deeds.
See, I fall into.
That'd make them nervous.
Well,
I'm sorry to those of you that are online, you don't know what's happening. I get
phone calls.
telephone calls on my phone, which comes in over my Zoom account. Can you just hit delete there?
That one, right?
Yeah. So, again, I am in some ways a universalist. I'm a universalist. And what that means is I understand the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus as his words, "It is finished." God's ultimate need to judge human beings is finished. So the sacrifice of Jesus is for all. It's not just for those who name him and claim him. So, in the little saying that you said, which I love, is nearly to the cross I cling. In that theology, if you're not clinging to the cross, you're screwed.
You are, and that's just it. That's what it comes down to. Like, we had talked about, like, control, and that's it. So if you're not doing everything in the name of Christ in your walk, you're right, you're not going into paradise. You know, you've accepted salvation, but you didn't keep up your end of the deal.
Right. I think that I don't think that when I talk about universalism, which means I think in the end, I really do believe that God loves all people. And that God's love, we cannot just as people who believe in Christ claim, well, you know, God, like a mother who will not forsake her nursing child. A mother doesn't cling and hold her nursing child because her child is good, doesn't hold her nursing child because her child has been obedient, or any of it. In some ways, you think about, I go down to the preschool and there's a baby there who will not be consoled, right?
Yeah.
And you know what?
Mommy.
It draws the love of the people more.
Yeah.
More. They're drawn to this child. And I think for all the different pieces and parts of Scripture that have been lifted up, and then the theology is built on them, I'm going to go back and make a new list. I'm going to make a different list of who God is, of how God loves us.
Look at the prodigal son. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there's this-
That is the
It
most
is-
beautiful.
And then people say, well, you know, that happened because he came to his senses and came back.
Change, yeah, no.
But the father was looking day and night for this child.
What's love got to do with
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
Come on.
That's right. So I think that the power of these pieces that get built together, and we construct a house of our understanding of God and of life and what God wants, I think we have to be careful. And I launched into all of this because of this verse 2, which says God has become my salvation.
Yep.
Right, there's different ways to understand that, but I think universally,
Yeah.
they mean here and now, you
Saved.
intervened for
Right.
me, and the remnant of Israel is returning now.
Right.
And only through the salvation of God does that happen.
Right. Our life was over,
Saving grace.
and now it's not over.
Right.
God has saved us. So, all right,
Yeah,
so my
okay.
point is made about making sure that we keep that word grounded. Doesn't
Right.
have to be limited to, but keep it grounded in
That thought as we study
saving,
that.
actual saving events.
We still have that connection, whether we're here or whether we're in our graves waiting, we still have that connection with God, because when God created us, and I think all three of the traditions that I know best have the same creation story. God created us out of the earth, and then breathed Ruach, his
Yeah, the breath.
his
Right.
spirit.
Life.
And so we are,
Yep.
there is a bit of the divine in all of us.
Yes,
And it's just longing and waiting to return to God.
right. So, also then, because I feel we haven't said enough about this yet, I think congregations need to be involved in the work of salvation. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah, feed
Well-
the hungry.
Well, yeah, we call it
Right.
mission.
Sure.
I'm glad to be in the time where mission is what defines the church, not its add-on after we're doing church. So you have church, which is singing and praying and strengthening the body, and then we ask people to go to the next 10% and do mission. The mission of the church is about the salvation of the world. And that salvation involves, look, the opportunities are very concrete. The people are fleeing from drug lords in South America, grabbing their children and
Yep,
running
running.
with nothing. They are crying out to God, and by the way, most of them are Christians. They are crying out to God for salvation. And the church is the hands and feet of God providing, and I don't mean just Christian churches, I mean communities of faith are the salvation of people. People's lives are actually saved.
A lot of the agencies that work with the refugees are made up of people of all faiths, which
That's
is
right.
really encouraging.
It
It
is,
is.
because faith in the world is seen as something you can't have and then ignore the suffering of humanity. You can't.
And it
because-
breeds respect, Debbie, because that's what's missing in so much. It breeds respect for one another's beliefs.
It does.
Yep.
It does. And if you don't want to budge on that, you've got,
Yeah, you're sunk.
well, what have you got? You've got a lot of,
Chaos.
yeah, a lot of stingy people. The kind of people who said, and this was said a few years back, we should take the plaque off the Statue of Liberty that says, give me your
Tired,
Toy or
yeah.
Yeah, you're
tired.
tired, yeah, I know.
Because, you know,
Yeah. there's
My
60%.
taxes are going up.
exactly, I mean, that's the whole point of that statue, what the heck? But,
Oh, gosh, it's,
you know,
yeah.
that idea of hospitality is missing a lot. And I will give a lot of credit, though, to a great many of the Christian churches, especially along the border, which are sanctuaries.
Oh,
They
No
are.
matter whether
It's
they're
amazing.
fundamentalist or, you know, conservative or liberal, they all do think that that message is very, very important. Of course, there are always the exceptions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the news is full of the exceptions and
All the
not,
time.
you know, yeah.
I mean, I love to pick on Joel Osteen. People would say it's because I'm jealous. But, you know, and remember back when,
Oh, come on.
what was the hurricane that they asked him to
Well, you
open
can't
up?
come dirty my church.
That's right,
Is that Joel Osteen?
Joel's.
Yeah, you know, down in
He
Texas.
refused to
I've
open.
seen, he's on TV late at night on the weekends.
Oh, yeah.
He's
all
on
over the
TV
place.
all over the
Yeah.
place.
Unfortunately, I don't turn off the channel quick enough, and he comes on, and I'm like, no.
But he bought that stadium
But I
and
didn't
turned the
know
stadium into a church, and then when Katrina
Yeah.
hit on the shores, and they were looking for shelter anywhere, they
All
refused
right.
to open the church for shelter.
I did not know that.
Yep. And the quote
That
that
sounds
this
more
Pat
like-
just delivered was.
Yeah, I hate to say
"You're
it.
not
Dirty.
gonna-
Dirty.
I don't
I
want
mean,
you
that's
coming
what,
dirty
no,
up my church."
basically, I mean, that's not what he said.
Okay.
But like when you cut to the chase,
That's what he
that's
meant.
what he meant. Yeah.
You know, I always, what's the guy with the 700 Club?
Oh, brother.
Yeah, what is his name?
Pat,
Pat Roberts.
yeah.
I mean, I remember when one of those big hurricanes hit Florida, and he said it was because Disneyland or Disney World
Oh,
was welcoming to LGBTQ.
sure it
people.
is.
Yeah, well, that's really weird, and that's really cruel and upsetting, and I'm sure there were a lot of people who believed that when he said it, because he had such a big audience. on TV.
Huge following, just like Jerry Falwell. Or that other nut, that Jimmy, whatever his name.
Jimmy Swagger.
Thank you. I mean, what a wackadoo.
But they have a lot of followers, these
They do.
folks, and
Oh.
all the prophets warned us of fake prophets. You know, don't listen to these people, but that takes a little discernment, and not everybody
No.
is, you know,
But-
maybe because of the circumstances of their birth, they're brought up in a very conservative household, that's what they're indoctrinated in. I kind of don't blame them, but at a certain point in time, you have to see that some of this stuff is really cruel and awful.
But see, I just have to tell you, I get letters, text messages, words from the other side to me. See, they think that I'm the one who, the liberal people must be raised
Oh,
in liberal
absolutely.
households. How could you believe what you're saying? It's totally antithetical to everything that Jesus taught, that, you know, if a person's a Christian and they want to be saved, they need to come into church, give their life to Jesus Christ, and get on with the business of living a Christian life. And as far as interfaith gatherings, what's the point of getting together? There was a Methodist, a United Methodist pastor. Colette's not listening right now, so that's fine.
She's hanging
Oh,
out.
yes, I am.
Yeah.
She's there.
I wanted to say
See,
something about
pastor.
Methodists, but they can't
Well,
get
you
it
can
past you. So,
Go ahead and say it.
a Methodist pastor in the town where I was, we were going to plan an interfaith gathering, And we were talking about how we're going to be together. I think there were Sikhs, there were Muslims, I mean, people from, I think, 14 different expressions of religious faith. And the Methodist pastor said, I'm not coming. And we said, why aren't you coming? And he said, well, I'm not going to be in a room full of a whole bunch of people who need to be told to give their lives to Jesus Christ so they can be saved, and then not do it. Like, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, that's my call in ministry. I owe it to them to give them a chance to hear the truth and to be saved.
The truth.
So we basically,
Yeah.
we said,
But I'm sure there were pastors and leaders in all of those different
Who felt the same.
denominations and faiths that felt the same.
but that's right. That's exactly right. There were people like that. In fact,
Sure there were.
the pastor of the I think it's a Missouri Synod Lutheran, I don't know
Oh, they're
which one it
tough.
was.
Yeah, they're tough.
He told us that he had been told by his bishop he wasn't allowed to attend
Right.
because they did not believe in interfaith gatherings. There's only one faith, one true faith. And why support the idea?
Oh, baloney.
You know,
Well said. Well, I know in our town, like we have, like they used to use the term ecumenical
Yes.
council.
yeah.
Every church in town belonged to it, except the biggest church, the Gospel Church up on 208.
Of course.
They were not part of that
understand.
ecumenical
Right.
council of churches.
Yeah.
Well, remember, too, a lot of people,
You have to keep
Nope.
yourself away from them.
well, the ecumenical was those who are united by Christ. So in an ecumenical gathering,
All right.
you're going to
Lots
have
of different
Christians.
Christians,
It's a
right.
gathering of Christians. Interfaith
All right.
is when you're going to have Christians of all varieties, but then you're also going to have people of other faiths.
Right.
And it was, ecumenical gatherings were pretty exciting in the 60s and the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah.
Right.
You know, somebody would say, you are going to get to go inside the Catholic Church and see what it
Like
looks
shocking,
like.
right?
Yeah. But
Without it
Catholics
falling
weren't
down.
allowed, I understand.
No.
to
No,
go
they
into
weren't.
anybody
You were
else's.
not.
So that's why it always had to be in the Catholic
It had-
cathedral or
yeah.
the church, yeah.
Yeah, and to do that, they would not.
And
Isn't
put that napkin on your head,
Yeah.
ladies.
Yeah, right up until what, ecumenical 62, we had to have them.
But there was a lot of excitement, and so ecumenical gatherings were full. People came out of curiosity, and then it was like, I've been there,
Yes,
done that.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna do
Now
that
it's more
anymore.
exciting to go to
Well,
the Hindu temple
Right.
or.
You know, I want you to know,
Muslim
like,
mosque.
last April, I went to a interfaith at St. Anthony's Roman Catholic. That's my home church. And they had a few imams there.
Yeah,
They had 2 rabbis there. This was all in support of Ukraine.
right.
And they had the Ukrainian church from Passaic with their choir there.
Nice.
All of those representatives of all of the faiths, the Jehovah pastor from the church we have in Hawthorne, he was there. They were all there. And even a pastor from 208, from Gospel
Yeah.
Church.
Yeah, that's-
Everybody, and he had on a blue and gold tie. I know this guy well, so I had to go up to him and say, "I'm so proud of you, Howie." But it was almost a life-changing night
Yeah.
to hear Rabbi Wolf speak, and it
People behaving nicely.
the way you're
Yes.
supposed to,
People-
all for common cause.
Right. In the work of salvation.
Yeah. Ooh.
Work of salvation. It's,
Yeah, trying to protect those people.
let's read chapter 13,
Oh boy.
right?
Okay, who's reading? Am I? All
I
right.
guess you're the reader for today.
I'll read
You
today,
may as
sure.
well make it consistent.
Okay, this is God's message to Babylon, it says here. God showed Isaiah, son of Amoz, this message about Babylon. Raise a flag on the bare mountain. Call out to the men. Raise your hand to signal them. Tell them to enter through the gates for important people. I myself have commanded those people whom I have separated as mine. I have called those warriors to carry out my anger. They rejoice and are glad to do my will. Listen to the loud noise in the mountains. It sounds like many people. Listen to the noise among the kingdoms. Nations are gathering together. The Lord of heaven's armies is calling his army together for battle. This army is coming from a faraway land. It is coming from the edge of the horizon. In anger, the Lord is using this army like a weapon, and it will destroy the whole country. Cry, because the Lord's day of judging is near. God, all-powerful, is sending destruction. People will be weak with fear. Their courage will melt away. Everyone will be afraid. Pain and hurt will grab them. They will hurt like a woman giving birth to a baby. They will look at each other in fear. Their faces will become red like fire. Look, the Lord's day of judging is coming. It will be a terrible day. God will be very angry, and he will destroy the country. God will destroy the sinners who live in the land. The stars will not show their light. The skies will be dark. The sun will grow dark as it rises, and the moon will not give its light. The Lord says, I will punish the world for its evil. I will punish the wicked people for their sins. I will cause the proud people to lose their pride. I will destroy the pride of those who are cruel to others. People will be harder to find than pure gold. There will be fine gold in Ophir. It will make the sky shake, and the earth will be moved from its place. The Lord of heaven's armies will be very angry. His anger will burn at that time. Then the people from Babylon will run away like hunted deer. They will run like sheep who have no shepherd. Everyone will turn back to his own people. Each will run back to his own land. Anyone who is captured will be killed. Everyone who is caught will be killed with a sword. Their little children will be beaten to death as their parents watch. Everything in their houses will be stolen. Their wives will be raped. Look, I caused the armies of Media to attack in Babylon. They do not care about silver. They do not delight in gold. Their soldiers will shoot the young men with arrows. Soldiers will show no mercy on the children. They will not feel sorry for the little boys. Babylon is the most beautiful of all kingdoms. The Babylonians are very proud of it, but God will destroy it like Sodom and Gomorrah. No one will ever live there. No one will settle there again. No Arab will put his tent there. No shepherd will bring his sheep there. Only animals from the desert will live there. The houses of Babylon will be full of wild dogs. Owls will live there. Wild goats will leap about in the houses. Wolves will howl within the strong walls. Wild dogs will bark in the beautiful buildings. The end of Babylon is near. Its time is almost over. Ooh.
Okay.
Well, that wasn't a whole lot of praise. There wasn't much praise going on in that one, like 12.
No. This is God's salvation. God is determined to save Israel now, and Babylon has been destroying. I'm just going to say this because, boy, we've got a great context to think about this. And I'm going to just, people say they like me as a pastor because I own my humanness. I watched those pictures of those rockets that landed in that housing development yesterday.
Praying for
Oh,
it to go down.
And I would join the army that seeks to brush them back and to punish. And I don't blame just Putin. These are people. These are people that are determined. They are hell-bent on the destruction of anybody who is Ukrainian. And they are, and so I'm not saying it's the right answer. I'm just saying, I'm trying to be human here. And look at the ravaging, horrible destruction. And then, of course, inevitably somebody will say, like they did yesterday, oh, that's a war crime. And I go, well, do you have a list? Are you keeping track?
They supposedly are.
Yeah,
It's so long now.
It's so
It's
long,
like the
and-
Nazis. How do you?
Yeah.
They're still bringing Nazis to trial today. There are people in their 90s or late 90s. I think one just
Yeah.
recently was held for trial. It never ends. So what are we going to do?
yeah, this feeble old man, Debbie, yes.
Yeah, for the rest of time now, you just wish that it would end suddenly. And that's kind of what the oracle is saying, like Babylon will
It's over.
fall down.
Well, and, oh, I got a Charlie horse.
Oh,
That's bad.
That's
I
awful.
want to say, like my leg will let me. I want to say, I think the point that Isaiah is getting across is that we should never have an idea of God that watches the events of human beings and is passive. This is not a passive God who is going to, in the long run, stand by. And I want to believe this. I want to believe that there's justice in the world, that, yeah. I want to believe that God.
Arc of history bends towards justice.
Yes. And what does justice mean for, they were telling the further stories that, so the Russian people are out recruiting anybody of a certain age, pushing them into uniforms, and sending them into the battle machine, right? But they're also hiring mercenary armies whose purpose is not win the war. Its purpose is kill people, rape women, destroy property, do everything you can to see to it that all hope is crushed in Ukraine. This is not about winning a war. This is about depleting a people. Now, in my human life, I have to believe that God is affected by that kind of behavior in a way that I could begin to write an oracle like this. I could write an oracle that imagines that the day is going to come when all of this will be addressed, and that it will be addressed in such a way. I mean, the images are almost, I was thinking about a nuclear explosion here, because they talked about how Babylon, no one will want to live in Babylon, that the animals will flee from there. And I've been watching this documentary on Russia's big nuclear accident that took place in Chernobyl.
Chernobyl,
And the
yeah.
fact
That was
that
actually in Ukraine.
that's
Yep.
right, it is in Ukraine.
Yep, it
in
is.
Ukraine. So, and the fact that there is land here, I don't think Isaiah imagined that there was ever a human weapon that could render an area, what is it, 500 square miles, that is absolutely uninhabitable. And so that's how Isaiah in the oracle is imagining that the scales of justice will be righted. That these atrocities that were committed by Babylon, the scary part, and I'm just say this, is for Isaiah and some of the other prophets, they seem to be saying this happened because of your own atrocities.
Oh, God, yeah, no, I guess. Right.
This is happening because of what you have done. And you look at the history of some of these kings, and they've committed their own atrocities. So when the people cry out to Isaiah and say, why is God allowing this to happen? And the voice that is crying back through the oracles of the prophets is because this is how you were. This is what you were like.
Maybe the sins of the Russian people, and I don't hold the Ukrainians as sinless people, but in this case, they are the ones who are being wronged. But maybe the sins of the Russian people collectively is indifference. They're not rising up and getting rid of Putin, who is forcing them to do horrible things. They're not. Maybe indifference is the worst sin that you can commit.
It's like Russia's always had this thing about the Ukraine, like when they were starving, like I guess during the Depression
Stalin's.
area, like
Yeah.
Stalin, that was like his
He used them,
gold
he
mine.
forced them to just
Yeah.
raise the crops,
Yeah.
the wheat, and then shipped it all away.
But they were starving in Russia.
Yeah.
They were dying of starvation. It seems like in the Ukraine was all part of that. So the Ukraine has always been misused.
It's been the breadbasket
Yeah.
of Russia.
Yeah, there
and
you go.
It's been exploited, but, this is how fortunes change.
And that's
things
what
change.
happened here, yeah.
But what doesn't change is stop being cruel to other people. Come on, I just keep thinking something is gonna happen soon, I hope, to take Putin out. One of these folks who very bravely stands up and talks out and points out with proof of the crook that
Yeah, he
Putin
is,
is, and they get put in jail. But eventually, somebody is gonna say, this is enough, and they do away with Putin, which I don't, still not a good thing to do, but maybe it is a good thing, I don't know.
I'm right there, maybe it is good.
Yeah.
But I want to say, I think we have to be careful to not be too hard on people who don't know.
Well,
You know, the whole empire of Russia is, the people are kept in the dark.
exactly.
They are kept in the dark. Yes, there are
Yep.
ways they could find out, but they don't know who to
They
trust
don't know
either.
the truth, but what they do know is lies. And you see the result, and all of this technology makes it much easier to lie and spread a lie quickly.
Yes, it does.
I say, look at us who, we have open press.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, but look at what the lies have done in our country.
Right, because we don't just have free press, we have
Right.
competing.
Yes, right.
So we have stories that compete with each other, and then when you have competing interpreted narratives, you have to have some base from which you understand how you
Right.
pick what to believe, what not to believe. Like, and the narratives are strong.
Oh,
The
they are.
competing narratives in Russia,
Yep.
or in the United States, the competing narratives are very strong, and they're compelling to people that surprise me, because they're
Mm-hmm.
believing stuff I don't believe.
I mean, how do normal, sane people who are in our Congress,
Uh-huh.
believe that space lasers controlled by Jews,
Yep.
but they say they believe this stuff because they saw it on the internet, and they're sitting in our seats
Government.
of government. So how do we, what do we do about the average person who probably doesn't know as much about anything but sees that on a steady diet all day? How do we do
Yep.
that? And I think that's what's happening in Russia. People are not allowed to know the truth. They don't go out of their way to seek the truth. So, and then the
They only get
conscripts
one
are-
truth, I think is what
Well,
happens,
it's
right? There's the,
one
yeah, here's your
narrative.
line.
not
It's
the
got to be the
truth.
party line.
And how do you hold, I mean, okay, so the people that are going to suffer in this vision of Isaiah are the Babylonians.
Yeah,
Right.
and some of them are innocent.
I think, you think the Babylonian people at a time where they didn't have any communications at all?
Knew
Do
nothing.
you think they have any idea of
No,
who they're going to fight, why they're fighting them, and why they're taking over the,
no.
I just think that people should look at Putin and automatically know that man is a fraud. He is a creep. But I'm getting a different narrative. I know that.
Yes, that's right. You are part of the immersion into the Western narrative, and, Putin comes back, like I'm sure the leader of Babylon said, those people who talk about freedom, they are a threat. They're a
That's
threat to the poor. He talks about, how capitalism, we say, oh, communism. Capitalism is the most godless, terrible theory because it makes the rich rich and deprives the poor.
And there is a point.
Yeah,
there.
there you go.
So you have these narratives that have
A
touch
bit of truth.
base in
In each
truth.
one, right.
And we're fighting for a better understanding and hoping that we'll move in the right direction, but are you all sure you believe that God is involved here?
Right.
Are you sure? I don't know. Like I could just say, when I look at this and I see Isaiah longs for a writing of history, a correcting of history, that the Babylonian people, in their greed or whatever, their aggression, they took over, they conquered, and depleted entirely a group of people who believed that God, the God of Israel, was also the God of the world. Here's the part that gets really complicated for me. I am part of a people who also moved from the east and came west and conquered and depleted an entire
Right.
Culture.
culture, nations upon nations, not just one. And there were also people who believed in the divine spirit. They believed that, they would be protected. They were not particularly aggressive people, and so they were vulnerable. I'm a Babylonian. Like, I am a Babylonian.
Right.
And
This is what humans are capable of. And we can get told that it's okay to do this because God wants you to.
That's right.
God's on our side.
This is why I think visions of the end times, the disaster movies that show that in the end, the world is headed to destruction.
Right.
And that there aren't really going to be a whole lot of people who survive because we're all guilty.
The eschatology of all our three it does say eventually the world will end and then we'll stand before God.
Yeah, there's only be 13,000 people that are saved.
Not,
In the
Depends on what
in the
you
Mormon
think.
tradition,
All right.
only 13,000.
but,
So the rest of all of us
and just
peons are going to be like.
What is it, tell me again, is it 112,000? What does the Jews believe? They have a bigger number, 122,000, what, 120?
Oh,
It's a bigger number than what the Mormons have.
yeah, I don't know, and I
The-
don't
the-
really
the-
remember
the-
anymore how
the-
these.
People who will be,
Right. When the final
relic.
battle comes.
Yeah, the
and they'll
relic, right.
ride the road, go to the top of
yeah,
Masada,
whatever,
Masada,
yes,
yeah,
And
on
will be
a
saved.
yes,
actual happening.
right.
And,
Right. That
yeah,
did take place, but it wasn't the end of the world.
right. Well, you have to be a Millerite. Wasn't that those folks who, they would set a date, this is the.
Yes.
The day, will,
The
that
day
the
of-
world will end, and then they had to keep moving it.
Harold Camping,
Right, Harold Camping.
yeah,
He
WFME,
predicted the end of the world.
constantly.
And I think that what happens is that people who look at the events of history and see the viciousness and the deplorable behavior of human beings, we are, and they go, this is hopeless. The only way that God can fix this, and now you go right back.
Start over again.
Let's do a flood.
Yeah,
have a
let's
flood.
go.
No, it can't be a flood this time. It's gotta be.
No, that's a promise, right, we're gonna,
Let's do nuclear weapons.
let's accept the
Let's destroy
promise.
everybody and let God start over again.
I'm not for that.
No.
I'm
Well,
gonna raise my hand. I'm not for that.
so that's the most hopeful word you can get from Bible study, isn't it?
Hallelujah.
That's it.
That's great.
Just you go, what in the world?
Oh, I don't
That's
know.
what I mean. We're going away frustrated. I guess we're not gonna know all the answers, and some of the answers are not satisfying.
We
The
have to,
mystery continues.
yeah, there it
Well,
goes,
listen,
and it
if
goes,
we identified with Isaiah's people, this is really a good word.
It is,
This is a good word.
until you establish your own empire and
Uh-huh.
somebody else's base.
yeah,
Well, you just have to avoid that.
good
You have to
world.
just live as God's people and then be happy when all the oppressive, destructive, greedy people are all wiped off the face of the earth. And aren't you glad it doesn't include
Well-
us? Because we're not like that, right? We wouldn't have anything to do with that.
That's never gonna happen. So,
yeah, I don't
it's
know.
never gonna happen on this earth. I don't think.
Listen, here's the most positive word from Bible study today. Wail. For the day of the
Oh,
Lord
well,
is
there you
near,
go.
And it will come like destruction from the Almighty.
know.
Therefore all hands will be feeble, and every human heart will melt. Every human heart, it says,
Yeah,
will
it's
melt,
scary.
and they will be dismayed.
I'm dismayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I was reading this, I was dismayed, like I said, well, we're getting to, the little children will be beaten to death as their
Oh, isn't
parents
that
want. And I'm saying, oh, here we go, their houses will be stolen. I mean, it just got worse and worse.
God's
The soldiers will show no mercy to the children.
God
They're not
is-
going to feel sorry for little boys.
God is mad.
Yeah, he's
God
mad.
is really, really mad.
Mm.
And these aren't my little children are going to be beaten. You understand?
Right, yeah.
They're those Babylonians.
Or the Babylonian children are going to be
Oh, that
beaten.
makes all the difference. They're not
Although I don't
ours.
know how this works when it says all human beings, every
Right,
human heart.
Every human heart, but,
What happened to the idea
What
that
is-
God was mad
at
at
a
a
certain-
certain group of people?
right. That just goes to show you the oracle doesn't know what they're saying.
All right.
All right. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for listening in. I'm always amazed at how many of you come back. I don't know if it's at 10 o'clock at night or
When they have
it
a
is,
chance.
but I'm amazed how many of you listen. We're grateful for you who listen to this conversation between us and then think it's something worth listening to. 'Cause I think it is. I think even if it makes you a little depressed. But,
Lou,
yes.
can you keep me on? Or do you have to do a different Zoom
No, I can
for
keep
the
you on. Yep.
mission meeting?
Yep, you're the only one on right now anyway.
Right.
All right.
Did we lose
so
Colette?
I'm going to turn off the live.
No, I'm here.
All right, so long, Colette.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
See you next week.
Okay, we'll see you
Okay.
again, Colette.
I was thinking,
Okay,
Barbara.
bye-bye. I can't get myself off because I'm walking outdoors.
All right, it's fine. Just leave it on. You can turn it off when you get in there, okay?
Yeah.
How many secrets?
Okay.
All right.
No secret stuff going on.
All right.
Barbara, after that, I think we need some of those treasures you emailed us.
Are Elaine and Janet there?
Yes, Elaine and Janet are here.
Yeah. Linda said she cannot join us.
Okay.
So I'm just
Barbara?
going,
I
I'm going to
want
move.
I want
Linda,